All right, so it's 1:01. I'm going to get started here. The webinar will be recorded, so if someone misses the beginning part, we can always go back and rewatch it later if needed. So today we're going to be talking about automated production tracking and how, yes, it is possible. And joining me, we have Josh Naranjo from JJ Acoustics. So a little bit about the two of us. My name is Brianna Williams. I'm the Senior Product Manager at StructionSite. I have formerly been a project manager in the field where I was on the general contractor side of things, working with trade partners like JJ Acoustics. And I was actually a customer using StructionSite back in the day where we were using it for reality capture. Unfortunately, it didn't have the analytics that it has now. And then Josh is a senior project manager / estimator at JJ Acoustics. He's got a ton of experience, variety of whether it be office estimating. Also, he was a general foreman, and he's been a part of the Carpenters Union for over 32 years. So first, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to what SmartTrack does and what we're going to be talking about today. And then we'll stop with the slides and we'll jump into a discussion where Josh will be talking about how implementing SmartTrack has been on the beta project that he's been testing with. So as we all know, production tracking is an extremely manual process, and guesstimates are seen as gospel. And when I say that, I mean that it's up to the human who's doing the tracking to track it accurately and consistently. And what we found is that every job is tracking slightly differently using a variety of different tools and different perspectives in it. So one project team may track top and bottom track, and another project team may not. So the company isn't getting the consistent data where they can compare it from one project to the other. And you're relying on the accuracy that the foreman or superintendent or project manager is tracking at to be able to compare across projects as well. And there's always a negotiation between the field and the office. This is especially prevalent at the end of the month when you're submitting billing, where the field is maybe saying we're a certain percent complete and the office is saying something different. And there's just a variation in the two perspectives of exactly what is done. And I think having the imagery to go with the production tracking is where you're able to kind of remove the negotiation and actually have a common language in speaking about work that has been put in place. And the last thing is budget disagreements. This is caused by biases in reporting. And instead of having someone who is experiencing the problems of the job doing the reporting, you have it done by an unbiased third party. Some of the other problems that we've experienced with production tracking is that there's a big difference in the project budget versus the controller budget. So when you put together your estimate, you're making assumptions, you have set production rates that you're using, and the difference of what the field is actually able to put in place is going to vary. You're also spending somewhere, again, this is going to depend on the size of the job, but it could be somewhere between 12 and 15 hours each week manually tracking production instead of solving the problems that are coming up on the job site. And Josh will talk a little bit about more of how his team did tracking and how much time it took him on the specific project that he's working on. These are just some general averages. And what that translates to is you're losing work with inflated bids based on unfactual or eyeballed production reporting from previous jobs. Some companies do a great job tracking production and they have their productivity rates in the office. But again, you're using collected information from each individual team that may have variations, and building that consistent data platform across all of your projects is going to help, whether it be your estimating or pre-construction team, be able to use that information to make better estimates moving forward. And why use StructionSite and SmartTrack to track your progress on your project? Well, you're already collecting thousands of images throughout the life of a project. You may be collecting those simply for RFIs and change orders. It could be for claims. It could be if you want to use X-ray mode to be able to see behind the drywall once it's been put in place to know whether the outlet was installed or not. It could be that you want to have a time-lapse record of what happened on the job. Either way, site documentation is a critical aspect of kind of this insurance policy. The more images you add to this insurance policy, the better your coverage is going to be. So collecting those images is critically important to begin with. And what SmartTrack is doing is it's quantifying your percent complete or quantities of work put in place using the images that you're already capturing through site documentation. So what you're looking at here is the SmartTrack dashboard, where we're showing you the exact linear feet and square feet of board installed. It's giving you your week to week quantities of work installed, and it also gives you your percentage complete throughout the duration of the project. So the way that looks on the floor plan is slightly different than the dashboard. You're given a series of lines, just like a quantity takeoff would be shown in OST or Bluebeam or any of your other estimating platforms. And the way it's visualized is consistent across all projects. So you're able to quickly jump into any job across your company and see exactly where the status of construction is. So what we're looking at here is the dashed gray line is planned work. The colored dashed line represents partial work, and then solid colored lines represent completed scope. So as I click through these images, you're going to see the colored line weights on the floor plan change, and you're going to see the split view with the 360 image is also going to update to show you the same thing where the work is being put in place. And the way this is done is by using the visual imagery and the mapped quantities on the floor plan to update your exact work in place. So every time you do one of those video walks to document your project, you have your quantities mapped to your floor plan. And the goal of this is that it's all helping your project stay on track. And you're using the visual data that you have to make better decisions faster and stop spending time manually tracking production and spend more time analyzing what's happening on the job and how to solve problems. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll switch over to the discussion with Josh here. So want to kick it off by just asking you, Josh, to tell us your name, your role, and the specific project that we're going to be talking about today.
My name is Josh Naranjo. I'm with J&J Acoustics. I'm a senior project manager estimator, and the project that I'm currently running is the Nvidia project in Santa Clara.
Awesome. And just give us some context of the size of that project.
It's a big project. It's $29 million. A lot of intricacy in this project, a lot of things that can get missed. There's a lot of stuff related to production that you really need to be on top of, especially with that dollar value, with the amount of men that we have on the project. Things can go sideways really quick if you're not keeping an eye on things. So yeah, it's a huge project.
Yeah, it's great context. I was lucky enough before everything shut down to go walk the job, and it is a massive project, like Josh said. So just switching gears, let's talk a little bit about how you tracked production before you started using StructionSite and SmartTrack.
Well, I mean, we're still using the process that we usually use, which is, keeping track of top track, linear footage of walls that you've framed, square footage of board that you've hung. And then from there, we're still doing it that way because we're in the beta process. When StructionSite was introduced on Nvidia, we were still having to do it, the good old way, just writing it down and tracking it. But as time progressed and as we went from beta to actual concept and being able to use it, we were really able to see how the production part of it could really help. And to me, the big deal that I really liked was the percentage complete at the end of the month.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about the way you tracked production before, where you were gathering all those quantities, was that done using pen and paper, tablet? Maybe just talk a little bit about the tools you were using previously or currently as a comparison with SmartTrack.
Well, when you're running the work, when I was running the work, we were doing it just the pen and paper, you go down, you get the footages daily, you count the sheets that were in the room, when the guys started out, how many were left. It was a lot more manual, Now with technology, you have certain document control programs out there where you can put a spreadsheet that you can manually, tap and enter somebody's footage, or, we even have the estimating software where you can go and spend the time, highlight, what's been put in place, and then from there kind of decipher as far as the amount of square footage or quantities have been achieved.
Yeah, that's awesome. And who from your team was doing the tracking?
Well, it's a foreman. It's the foreman. If it's a really big project, he usually has somebody under him, a lead man, that'll go through and get footages from the guys. And then from there, that information is usually passed on to myself, or whoever the PM or the estimator or whoever's managing the project usually, keeps an eye on that to make sure that the guys are hitting the goals.
And how much time was that roughly taking?
Um, on the smaller projects, usually the foreman's doing it. You might spend, if you have a small crew, you may spend half an hour, maybe an hour altogether once you write it down and put it into some type of spreadsheet. On the bigger projects like Nvidia, shoot, you can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 3.5 hours. It just depends, on the amount of activities you have going on.
Yeah, and depending on what level you're tracking to,
Mhm.
like if you're tracking to the detail or if you're just doing generic tracking.
Yeah.
And what are some of the pain points that you found with manual production tracking?
It's accuracy and consistency. The accuracy is, the quantities that either you're writing down, you're figuring out that were put up, or the numbers that our crews are giving us, right? Yeah, that accuracy. The consistency is just, the foreman or whoever's in charge of getting those numbers, that they're getting them. We are a production-driven industry, so the numbers are super critical that we get them, so we know what the guys are getting.
Which it's really funny that you say that. I spent a little bit of time at a prefabrication company, and they were trying to get to the mindset of like factories that are doing manufacturing cars. They know exactly how many widgets they built per day. That's the factory line. That's how they make their money. And job sites, this concept is really new to us, of exactly what was done today and how many widgets was well, in our case, it's how many square feet or board or linear feet of studs was I able to install, and am I on track? Am I trending in a positive direction?
Yeah. Well, and also like on the bigger projects, it takes time. You have a project
It's not
this
a
size.
factory line. It's not clean.
Yeah, it's not a factory line. The guys are stressed out. Fast-paced projects, even if it's this size project, they want the turnaround to be done quickly. So you don't want that to suffer. So what happens? You end up having to put more resources to help the foreman be able to get that information that's needed.
Yeah, exactly. So talking a little bit about your project, Nvidia, it's a really large job and it's changing quickly. You have to have a big team to be able to cover that. So maybe talk a little bit about having the size be a problem. And we obviously came in really early with you guys when it was still a beta, and you had to begin documenting the entire job. So maybe talk a little bit about the challenges of that. And also, COVID happened right as we were beginning to roll this platform out on that job.
Yeah, there's a lot of area, a lot of ground to cover on this project. So just making sure you're hitting all the teams, all the areas, making sure you're consistently getting the footages that you need to getting it from the right teams, and then making sure you're documenting it. With COVID, that changed things. You had to have less interaction with the people. You had a social distance. So a lot of people were scared, to go even to talk to their workers, even though you're in that 6-foot distance, right, with a mask. So I think for the 360 camera and the process of doing that, I think that really helped, because once we understood and we were getting through the beta process, we were seeing what the information collected was doing as far as, getting the raw square footage, the linear footage, the top track put up, all that stuff, and using the dashboard, you can see kind of the curve, right? As far as the drywall that's been getting hung week to week, and you can tell. So that, to me, that made it really helpful to have this tool.
Yeah. And like you said, not everyone can be on the job site right now. And some people have to be working from home, and giving people access to the job site is extremely valuable, whether there's production tracking or not. Just having the visual aids and being able to, virtually walk the job is becoming more and more important as the dynamics of job sites change. So another thing that you had brought up earlier is the percent complete is really helpful for you at the end of the month. Maybe can you talk a little bit about how you've used that information for payment applications?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're a foreman and the PM comes to the job site, usually it's always during billing time, right? As a foreman, you're like, oh man, what percentage complete am I, so that they can submit the billing. But with SmartTrack, what's nice about it is you have that actual number, a few hours or the next day, actually, after you take the photos or the videos, that actually shows you, you go to the dashboard, you use your filters, and you can see how much wall you put up, how much board you put up. And then you can use that information when you put your billing. I didn't have to do it with a GC because, we weren't questioned. But if you needed to, you can use that percentage complete as a case to why you're owed what you're owed. So I think it's super helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, hopefully you're not questioned and everyone's on the same page with what percent complete you are. But having that validation and verification when discussing, exactly what was done that month with your foreman just makes it easier to have that kind of faith in the numbers of what's being put forward. So now let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your team's process to track production on Nvidia, especially using SmartTrack. So you guys picked this tool up when it was in beta, and we were lucky enough to have Bailey out there capturing images for us. So maybe talk a little bit about what that process looked like for your team.
I mean, it was, in talking to Bailey, I wasn't there for this part because Bailey was interacting with your team as far as the information that was needed. But, it's fairly simple, in the beginning, Bailey was taking mostly photos, but then he learned that the video process was much more effective as far as how many photos captured equals the video, or vice versa, if I'm explaining that correctly. But it was more important to do a video walk so that you have more images to capture. So it was relatively easy. He walked through. I mean, I think it was taking him probably an hour and a half or so to walk through. It's, normal paced walk. And yeah, I think it was pretty simple, actually.
How many floors is Nvidia again?
Oh man, you got probably got 6 or 7 floors. Some of them are obvious smaller footprint, but pretty sizable. A lot of floors, a lot of walking.
But even just an hour and a half to walk the entire kind of footprint of the project and have now you have the digital twin, right? You've got the virtual digitized job site so that anyone can go in and walk it exactly where Bailey walked in 2 or so hours. It's not a lot of time to be able to have record of everything that was done.
Yeah, you have the historical information there, right? With that X-ray mode, I mean, you could always kind of peel that onion back photo wise to see what was behind the drywall, was there back in there, and there's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great feature for specifically drywall and framing, is being able to know exactly where the other trades installed items in the wall, whether you have backing in the correct location, and being able to go back in time and use X-ray mode or time-lapse mode is really valuable. So basically the process was Bailey and our team pulled in the quantity takeoffs. So we have all of the quantities mapped to the Nvidia floor plan. And then Bailey would spend a couple hours each week walking. And then the next morning you would have access to maybe talk a little bit about what information was collected and how you were using it.
For myself, I was mostly using it for percentage complete. We really didn't get a chance to really use it for the production part, even though it would have been nice, if we had that. But so that part of it, we were tracking, just writing it down and keeping an eye on the numbers. But even to me, the percentage complete is huge because, hours spent, equals percentage complete. And if they jive, or you see the numbers where they're at, whether you're not making it or you are.
Yeah.
So to me, that was super valuable.
Absolutely. And coming out of the beta and now the tool being fully ramped up and utilized on your project, how do you plan on kind of changing what you've used SmartTrack for on your next job?
Well, whoever is doing the walk is going to walk twice a week. That's my plan. And then from there, one of the features that I like is that when you guys are putting the project together, we can customize it to where the areas are set up by sections, right? And so that you can get a little more detailed as far as where the pictures are. Let's see if I can describe this right. Because you're not able to, you still have to do some manual work as far as being able to quantify the amount of men that were working in the area related to the zone, and using the dashboard. Then from there you can extrapolate, the square footage the employee or the person was hanging a day, or how much was achieved. So that's kind of how I'm going to do it. I know there's some stuff possibly coming down the line that might make that easier, but that's as far as I can go with that.
Yeah, no, I think that is exactly the goal here. That
Yeah.
you can look at the quantities of work installed and compare them back to how you're building it. So what are the zones? What's the crew breakdown that I have? What was my budget? And am I installing the work at the pace that's needed? And I think, to what you're kind of leading on to there is, ideally this data can flow seamlessly into your budget and manpower tools so that the information is combined. We're tracking quantities and we're tracking percent complete, but the rest of the production tracking puzzle is the manpower and the budget. And we want to be able to bring all that information together to be able to know exactly the health of the project.
Exactly.
Awesome. And then thinking about your company, JJ Acoustics, as a whole, how are you guys rethinking how you track production, knowing that tools like SmartTrack exist now?
So I think that some of the way that we're going to be, even track of production, some of it's not going to change. I mean, there's still going to be some of that process that we normally do, but I think that being able to track with StructionSite with a smart tracker, I think it's going to make it. It's going to give our foreman more time. It's give him more time on his hands to be able to do what he needs to get done. Be able to focus more on getting the project built and not worrying so much about the production. I'm not saying that they're not going to still keep track of production, but with this format, it kind of takes some of the onus away, where they don't have to really focus on that as much. So that's kind of what I'm excited about. I'm hoping, once everything's up and running 100%, that we're really going to have a huge benefit as a company.
Yeah, and I think that you said something that I think is extremely valuable, is the foreman's job isn't going to change. They still need to understand what's happening on the job. They're still going to be out boots on the ground every day. But this gives them maybe a little bit of a safety net where they don't have to track everything manually perfectly. They can leverage this as a tool in their tool belt to help validate or verify or confirm what they're thinking, and maybe help them quickly at a quick glance be able to say, oh, you're right, there are a couple areas on that floor that still need to get done, and I need to go get my crews back into that area. So I think, leveraging it as a tool, not necessarily complete replacement, but it's something that they can leverage.
Definitely.
So you're talking about getting some of your foremen getting some time back, and you as a project manager, if you're managing multiple projects, What are some of the benefits that you'll see from having this information accessible for everyone across the company?
Well, I mean, for the owner, I mean, it's nice that he can log in into the website. He can look at, instead of visiting the project, and seeing how things are going, he can see it himself. He can see the percentage complete. He can pull the layers back, on the floor plan and get a real number. He knows where it's at. He can see the money spent. He can see if we're upside down, if we're making money, so not to say, people don't still want to visit the job site. We still want to see our guys that are working hard, but it's nice because it's accessible. There's transparency. Anybody that has an account or part of that project can view any of the information anytime. It's nice. It's refreshing.
Yeah, and I know your role is both senior PM and estimator, but for projects where maybe the precon group was a slightly different team, it could also give your precon team visibility into what's happening on the project, so that they can know exactly where the project's trending. And if they're estimating another job, they can think about, how does what I'm putting forward in my next bid correlate with how I estimated a previous project?
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the next steps that you want to take with this information that's being collected from SmartTrack?
Well, I mean, all data that we collect and, every project that we're on, it's always a lesson learned, right? We're able to see what footages the guys are getting. I mean, over the last 30 plus years, I mean, the footages don't change that much. I mean, it's really the pool of employees that we have we have access to at the union hall, whether it's a really busy time and we're limited on those quality guys. I mean, there's a lot of factors that we look forward to with StructionSite and being able to implement it and being able to use it as to help us with our estimating.
Yeah, I think it's the numbers don't change too much unless something maybe goes sideways on the project or something was missed, and having that visibility earlier with tools like SmartTrack is extremely beneficial, or being able to, like you said, do a retrospective or a postmortem after the project is completed to understand, what went wrong or what went well, so that you can take that information to the next job.
Yeah.
And then where does this information need to go to be most valuable to your company? We're obviously collecting a bunch of information pulled from images, but what do you want to do with this next? Where do you think it has its most benefit?
I mean, I think it's ultimately about the production, right? What are we getting? What is that historical data as far as from project to project? But, every project differs, right? Sometimes you don't know what foreman you're going to get. You don't know what GC, what superintendent's going to be running the project. I mean, there's just so many factors. They could make a positive project go well, or make a project, just go bad. So there's a lot of factors, but definitely it's all about the production. It's a production-driven industry, so that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about pre-construction and things that potentially go wrong, and what are some of the big risks that happen. So maybe can you just speak a little bit about going from estimating to construction, and what are some of the challenges that you face there?
Well, I touched on it a little bit. I mean, from getting the job, from pre-construction, from having the meetings, letting the foreman that's going to be running the job know what the production rates are. There's a lot involved. And so I'm hoping that this will help the foreman be able to use this tool to be able to help him, run the job, make the job easier for him to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and making sure that we're bridging the estimate with the builder who's going to be putting the work in place is extremely important. And a lot of times, the estimate is done by one team member, and then You have the foreman who's going to be building the job, maybe thinking about certain things in a different way, and having tools that span from pre-construction all the way through to the field is extremely valuable. And having your foreman or yourself have access to all of the quantities and the percent completes in one solid platform, I think it gives a lot of visibility to the field team.
Yes.
So how accurate do you find that estimates are, and what could possibly go wrong with them?
Well, estimates are perfect. I mean, it's an estimate, right? You do your best. You do your best to provide a good estimate, to be thorough. But kind of what I mentioned earlier is what can impact the project is the team, whether it's your own team or whether it's the GC's team. So those things sometimes you can't control. The labor pool, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So those are things you know sometimes you have to contend with. You don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know coming from the GC's perspective, sometimes the schedule gets accelerated and you have to stack some crews on a floor, or it could be that you've got to stock materials and they're in someone's way and it's going to slow them down a little bit. So being able to keep up with what's happening and what are the impacts and being able to adjust the plan accordingly is important. And if you don't adjust the plan early enough, you can see schedule delays or impacts to the bottom line.
Yeah.
So why are actual production rates important for pre-construction to understand? So when I say actual production rates, I mean, what was the productivity rate that the job was able to hit?
Well, I mean, you're always so when you put the estimate, right? The estimate is based on production rates. So, I mean, obviously, when we put that bid out, or when we, get the project based on those footages, I mean, the expectation is the guys to hit those production rates. So if they're not, then there's something wrong with the bid. So that's why the historical value and lessons learned from previous projects, that helps us to be able to look at the next estimate of maybe a little bit differently, right? Might have been a similar scenario. What could we have done differently? What will we do differently? So, yeah.
And I think that it's extremely important to think about, the mistakes that we've made in the past and how we want to go about the next project differently. And that's something that's unique about construction is you get new projects starting all the time, and being able to adapt and adjust sooner makes a big difference. Instead of waiting for all of the projects that are underway to finish, being able to adjust maybe the bid that you have going out next week with exactly what's happening with the current market is important.
Mm-hmm. It's huge.
Yeah. And so in the future, how would you use SmartTrack to understand current projects' productivities to maybe adapt or adjust the way you're pursuing a project?
I think it's a similar question, but yeah, you're just going to look at the raw data. You're going to look at the raw data, and you're going to see what adjustments you need to make to, make an adjustment to the bid. But the market can dictate that, right? And if the market's tight, if there's not a lot of work out there, you're going to make adjustments above and beyond sometimes what you need to get the project. But the hope is not to have to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And at the end of the day, now you're able to collect tons of information about what's happening on a job, and the more analytics, the better. What would you say your specific goal is of what this data can tell you to help your company?
So the transparency. I mean, I really like the just getting accurate and timely information. Right now, because I'm gonna on the future project, I'll be doing the walks twice a week. But what I look forward to in the future is being able to have real-time information, which is the day of. That's my hope. That's my hope, is to be able to get real-time information that's consistent.
Yeah, and I think that's mean, that's where we're headed with all of this. Before it was, you were validating once a month with payment applications, you were updating all of your budgets. Foreman were doing it on a weekly basis, you were checking it weekly, but instead being able to check it real time and know exactly what's happening. That's the goal. That gives everyone, like you said, the visibility into exactly what's happening on the job.
I mean, you're able to get the real-time information by, writing it down and getting the footages daily, but, the hope is to be able to use Smart Tracker to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving people easy access to the job site and visibility from anywhere within the company as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Josh, is there anything else you want to say to wrap up about SmartTrack and some of the benefits that you've seen, or shall we hop into questions?
Just that I'm excited that we're using it. I think it's a really good tool, really good product. I'm excited. We're starting to use it on other projects, and I think it's a very valuable tool. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and we can't thank you and your company enough for a lot of the effort that you guys have put in, coming from beta now to the product is launched and now out in the wild. Companies like you giving feedback are what make it functional and what make it do exactly what other people in the industry need it to do. So with that, we can switch over to questions, and I see a couple have come in here. So we have a question that says, is this going to be beneficial for you in evaluating other ways of building or using innovative products, i.e. prefabrication versus field labor or fabrication labor? For example, if a complex framing project, will it help to understand potential cost savings as a result of increased productivity, and how to quantify that? So Josh, I'm gonna let you answer that one.
I mean, I haven't, I'm sure it will be beneficial to do that. I haven't used it myself, for that part of it, but I can definitely see it being a valuable tool. I mean, again, this is something that we've been using for 6-7 months. There's just so much value to what this can do. I'm new to it, but I do see that as something that we can do. And I think, Bree, something that we had talked about before is when you download the information, I mean, you guys can custom build it to where, you can do material takeoff from this, right?
Yep.
We can do, all that stuff as far as if you have a 3-and-5 wall, 6-inch wall, we can get the quantities from that. So that's another helpful tool that you're able to use, if you set up the project correctly.
Yeah, and maybe elaborate a little bit more on that. Something that could be a really great use case is if you have some of the work being done offsite, whether it be in a factory or you're building modular in a factory, everything's based on imagery. So you could have a camera, a 360 camera. They're, these really simple, small things. You could have one on the job site where you're tracking work put in place in the project field. And then you could have one where you're tracking work put in place in the factory. And then you're able to say exactly what's being done factory versus field. So you could potentially have cameras in both locations tracking work in place. So that's another interesting use case that we haven't explored yet, but I definitely think is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of cameras is they're, $400, and you could have a camera in each of the different locations to track exactly what's happening. So we have another question that's come in. So this one is from Sarah. Dealing with time-consuming paperwork, unlabeled photos, and disorganized project updates. Now that you're using StructionSite, would it take you 10 steps back being able to use this platform?
Yeah, I mean, so when you're doing the video walk, it tells you exactly where you're at in the building. I mean, you can actually click on the little dot and you can rotate. It'll rotate, being that it's a 360 image, you can rotate the view in which you're looking at it. I don't know if you can share. Can you share that? Bree?
Yeah. So when you're looking at that 360 photo, it's going to have a node on the floor plan that tells you where you are. It has a view cone telling you which wall you're facing. You can share that specific view or you could share the entire walk with someone, whether it be exported into a PDF where you want to share it with your owner and you only want them to see one walk or one image, or you could share the entire project and give people view only access. So to Sarah's point here, paperwork and images are extremely difficult to manage. And Josh, I'm sure you know this better than everyone, but if each of your foremen and crew members are out there taking photos, how do you collect all those back and then know where the picture was taken, when it was taken, and have that record that you need to provide for, whether it be as-built or dealing with change orders or RFIs? So I think starting with organizing your site documentation is a really critical first step here.
Yeah, the historical information related to pictures and videos, to me is huge. You know, you can go back anytime, look at the X-ray mode. If the GC has a question as far as, hey, so-and-so is saying I'm bringing up backing because that's always an issue, right? You know, you could always go back, you can send that snapshot with that timestamp at that location and just send that image, right, that they could open up with a link.
Yeah, and you had already said, you know, if your GC questions your billing, if hopefully they don't, if they do question your billing, you could always send them that specific walk that was the last day of the month, and that they could just virtually walk it and say, okay, yes, there is work put in place in those locations. Or you could share the floor plan that has the color coded walls telling them exactly what's done.
Which is super helpful.
Yeah.
I like that plan. Yeah.
And Sarah followed up and said, that's excellent. Thank you. I'm taking away that it's a huge key to time management. Josh, you want to take that one?
I mean, it is. I mean, we have so many tools that we use now, you know, and I think this one is one of those tools that, to me, is a game changer. You know, we have our document control that everybody uses. Everybody knows what company it is. You know, where you can, you know, do your issues log and whatnot. But I think this is just an added feature that I think is super helpful. You can go back anytime and look at what's been put in place at any particular time.
Yeah.
But you have to take the pictures, you have to take the video walks, you know, somebody's got to do that.
That's a good point. And it is still a time consuming process, but now instead of having one person go out and take pictures or hope that you can collect all the pictures from your different team members, and then someone else going out and manually collecting all the information about work in place, now you're killing two birds with one stone. You have one person walking the job with the correct detail to get that, you know, nice insurance policy of site documentation. And then on top of that, you're going to get all the analytics about exactly what was done on the job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that with that dashboard, I kind of mentioned earlier that, you know, you never want to talk about claims, but if there was ever any claims as far as loss of production or, you know, something being left behind, you can always go back, you know, to those areas, take off the filters as far as what work is still left to complete. And it's like, okay, well, why isn't that complete and everything else around that, you know? I mean, there's just so many tools you can use from it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. But the first part is collecting the images.
Yeah.
Get those images, and then you can do so much more from having them. And Patricia added a great comment. Right click on the image, and under properties, you'll find the date taken. Completely agree. The struggle is, do you know where that picture was taken? So on a project like Nvidia that has multiple offices that all look exactly the same, you take a picture in wall. How do you know which in-wall image that was of? And that's the beauty of StructionSite having site documentation. Like Josh said, you have time lapse where you can click on a location and see all of the images that were captured in that exact spot over time. And if you're using SmartTrack, you also have your quantity history logged in that specific location as well.
Yeah, you got to make sure definitely you walk into every room, in and out, so that you have the photo captured for that particular conference room or, you know, classroom or whatever it is. You know, you do have to go in and out. Yes, it'll capture some of it from the outside, you know, if you're in the hallway into the room, but to really get the full perspective, you got to go into the room and go out.
Yeah, and you're right on. It's all image based. So if you walk by a room, we'll be able to get the quantity on the back wall, but you have to go in the room to get the other 4 walls. And that's important for the image quality as well. Yeah. Well, I don't see any other questions. I'm going to hold here for a minute and see if any other ones pop in. But great questions so far. And if we don't have any more rolling in here, we can wrap up a few minutes early and give people some time back in their day. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in. Josh, really appreciate your time and all the feedback that you guys have given. If anyone has any questions or want to learn more about what StructionSite is doing with production tracking, feel free to visit our website. There's a bunch more information there. And then we can also schedule some time with our account executives if you wanted a real-time demo. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Stay safe. Take care.
Bye.